Hey everybody, welcome back to GTM. Today I want to tell you about this blade that you're looking at right here. It was sent out to the channel by Reiff knives. Full disclosure, Stu and I over there have connected in the past. In fact, if you've been watching my channel for a while, or maybe my B channel, North Knives, you've probably seen some of the videos that I do or some of the shorts concerning Reiff knives. I'm a big fan. In fact, this is the third installment of a Reiff knives series that I've done. I've already reviewed the F6 and the F4, and now I'm on to the F3, the smallest of them right here. Now all of these three knives that I'm reviewing and have reviewed, they have similar features as far as aesthetics go, as far as the looks go in general, but they have different specs. And so I'm hoping that maybe you caught in the beginning of the video, I posted a little specs sheet there, so if you need to go back and catch that, go back and catch that. I'm going to move forward just talking about the actual features of the knife, the cutting performance, and my experience with it thus far. So at the point of cutting this cardboard right here, I'd actually already had the blade in my possession for a full month, and I had used it pretty heavily. I tried to treat it like a true EDC. I had cut down lots of boxes, and I had opened many packages, broken zip ties, used it on carving and whittling, and abused it just a little bit here and there with other tasks. And I didn't really, like resharpen it. I honed it, definitely honed it, but cardboard will dull a blade down. Even the Invincible 3V will eventually dull. And this is an 1/8 inch thick, and so it's not going to slip through cardboard. It's not a type of knife that is just for carving, or it's not a box cutter, it's not a chef's knife. It's the XC, so extreme conditions, and so the edge and the profile of the blade is meant to be able to do a variety of tasks, I think, pretty well, but not anything the best. And that was kind of my experience with it, is it's not going to be like your go-to carving knife, but can you do a tent peg with it? Can you do a notch? Can you break down boxes with it? Absolutely. The edge itself does have the ability to perform, and it didn't let me down when I did a little whittling right here on a piece of oak and tried out a little bit of just pruning, kind of doing some chest lever cuts. Very comfortable handle. I'm going to save the handle conversation for towards the end. But the blade itself, as far as the performance goes, it cut nicely, very controllable. I would say that it is, kind of a convex V-grind. I think that's how he advertised it as well on the site, and that makes sense to me. Looking at the way that it performs, it doesn't dig in crazy deep, but here's the benefit of that, guys. That edge right there, having a little bit extra thickness behind the shoulder, it's not razor thin, but it allows you to do your regular daily tasks and then some hard use tasks as well without chipping out. And this is 3V, and so it's a very suitable steel for my temperature and climate. Cold weather, I want something that has toughness, really good toughness and wear resistance, all those kind of things. And I found that it just works really well for not dulling too quickly and not chipping out, and that's something I do care about. So one day at the range, it was particularly cold out, and I was kind of dissatisfied with the fact that I still don't have a pair of shooter's gloves after all these years. And I thought, I have so many wool gloves or mittens, I might as well just make a pair, because I really only need that index finger when I'm shooting. I can pretty much load up magazines and actuate a trigger, or even a Savage AccuTrigger. So I just put the blade to work, punctured a hole through there, and these are really thick gloves, guys. They're wool, but they're multi-layered. It's a Thinsulate brand, I think, and it was quite a lot to cut through there. Again, this isn't like meant to be a super piercing tip. It's not a Tonto. It is more of a drop point, typical design, but I thought it should be able to handle this reasonably well, and it doesn't just slice right through. That's fine with me. It's a very robust tip in the first place. It's not going to break off on you. I just needed it to be able to handle a task like this without giving me too much trouble or resistance or finagling with it. Sometimes when it's really cold and I'm trying to do tasks like this, dexterity goes down, and so I need a very controllable knife, and it does have to be sharp enough and slicey enough to handle simple things like this without giving me more trouble than it's worth, essentially. And it did the trick. This worked well. I was able to shoot that day comfortably, get some good trigger pulls because of it. Now that 1/8 inch stock thickness does have some benefits. It lends itself to some of the more robust tasks, so maybe a little bit of light prying, and even batoning. Believe it or not, a 2.9 inch long blade, it did pretty well. I was happy with it. Now, I still stand by my statement that it's not the most slicey knife that I have in my collection, but I was actually impressed at how well it did do in the kitchen. If this is the knife that I have on me on my side, I'm out in the woods, or I'm hiking somewhere maybe, and I have just this one knife at my side to cut up food or vegetables with, you know what? It's going to get by pretty well. Being 2.9 inches, an 1/8 inch thick, and it's not a flat grind, I thought these translucent slices I was pulling out were actually pretty reasonable, and I was happy with that. Check that out. Taking a look at the sheathing system here, the one that I have is in Kydex, and I like that a lot, especially for this blade size. It's very practical because I can EDC this, and when it comes to EDCing a fixed blade, I just personally prefer Kydex. I know some people like to pocket carry, and I believe there might even be some pocket carry options in the works. I saw a SHOT Show video, or maybe it was a Blade Show video, with some discussion about that. So perhaps keep your eyes peeled in the future. Maybe there'll be like a pocket organizer, leather, something or other that will work out. I'm sure you could find something that's already on the market that would work for it, but I like Kydex. Okay, especially with high quality premium blades like this, I do not want to lose this out of a pocket, and sometimes that happens. I have like this anorak has strings on the inside, which I'll show you in a little bit, and I've had pocket knives get caught on the clip before and pull out, and I've lost them. This guy, if you could hear that click in there, it's not going to get pulled out by this string underneath, as you can see right here. It's not going to grab that string and get lost. It's going to stay retained. I like it a lot. I do have a fire steel looped in there with my own little shock cord kind of thing. I know it looks a little goofy there, but I just like to keep a fire steel on a knife, especially if it's one of the only blades I'm wearing. You don't have to wear it on your belt. Obviously, you could wear it in other ways. I like to carry sometimes in a backpack, or even in this anorak in the main pocket. It's a nice small size, but it still has good thickness to the handle, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And I found that the sheath itself made it convenient for lots of different types of carry, and I wasn't worried it was going to fall out of the sheath at any point. It's retained really, really well. So the next thing I wanted to do with the blade, now that I've kind of showed you a little bit of the cutting performance, you know that it can work with wood, I want to just go ahead and do a little firecraft. And so I make 2 flat planes of wood, and then I start a feather stick. And this is a hard resin-filled piece of pine that I'm working with here. Those usually feather really nicely, and this one was no exception. The blade itself, finding that convex V edge, it's just not difficult, guys. If you know the knee draw method, kind of what I'm using here, you're going to be able to use it really, really well and make those long curls with many, many barrels in there. Some of the survival school or bushcraft school guys like Dave Canterbury will tell you that you need at least 3 curls or turns in each feather to make it effective for catching fire, and this one definitely caught fire easy enough. I found the knife to feather stick and work with wood in this kind of way very, very well. I think it's the convex nature of it. Didn't dull fast. Again, it's 3V. I like that a lot, and it's just a very nice, clean edge. The grind angles were very even on both sides. That's an important part of it as well. You could feather stick with anything sharp, but this does a particularly nice feather stick, I think. And so I decided to take the end of the blade there. If you take a look at that, there's a piece that doesn't have a coating on it on the butt of the knife. Kind of unique. Seen it maybe on a couple designs. It's a good idea if you want to keep your blade clean, if you're going to work with meat, you're going to be cutting food, and you don't want ferrocerium getting on your blade itself. You can go down to the butt of the knife, and it took a little practice for me. I'm going to be honest with you, it took a little practice for me, but not too many strikes here, and I got it figured out, got the angle, worked very, very well on my ferro rod, and I don't think you'll have trouble with yours. All right, and this takes me up to the handle itself and the scales, the design there, ergonomics. This is the part that people, if you watch my channel, you know I have the most opinions about. I think that's partially because there are so many well-designed edges and knives out there with really poorly designed handles. And it's such a shame that not enough attention goes to handles. Maybe it's because I have XL size hands that I just feel underrepresented by the knife market in general, but I am so happy to have stumbled across Reiff knives because these handles are satisfying. They are cool. They're great. They're thick enough and broad enough for me, including this little F3. Now, again, this is more of an EDC blade. It's a smaller blade. I don't expect it to be as hand-filling as the F4, certainly not as much as the F6, but this one somehow the proportions of the blade, 2.9 inch cutting edge, as well as a long enough handle for my XL size hands, that just seems to be not very common. And not to mention, it's thick enough, it's broad enough, and it's thick enough that I feel comfortable with it. It doesn't need handle scales, like increased thickness at all. It's just very comfortable. It's kind of a barrel style, but it does have some contours cut into it or sanded down in it right there. There's no sharp edges on the handles. Again, when it comes to custom knives and EDC knives, I don't want all these weird squared edges on the blade where hot spots are going to develop. You'll notice that the hardware sinks in just enough to sit flushly with the handle. These are some of the better handles that I've received. It's very, very comfortable, especially considering it's a small blade in general. And I'll tell you that I've had knives in the past where the blade, the edge was ideal, but the handle was not. And I sold those knives in a heartbeat because I just don't use knives that are uncomfortable. I don't like it. I do work with blades quite a bit more than the average person does. And if I find a blade that doesn't have a good handle, I won't work with it. Sometimes I'll find a blade that does have a good handle and not a perfect edge, and I'll work with that. I'm willing to do a lot to make it work if the handle itself is designed well. And long story short, this one is designed well. I think this blade in general, everything about it is pretty cool. I love the high vis orange. That's something, maybe it's just me, it's my style. I like the two-tone thing going on there, and I'm so thankful that Stu sent it out to the channel. Guys, it's got my support. I'm going to tell you it's a great blade. Go ahead and buy one if you think you need something that can handle some extra tough tasks. This is the F3XC.